Imagine for a moment that every desire, every ambition you've ever held could be instantly fulfilled, that success, fame, and influence were all yours without effort. What if the very thing you believe would liberate you was actually the most insidious trap, a gilded cage that slowly corrodes your soul? This is not just a philosophical abstraction. It's a critical question about the very nature of human motivation, success, and ultimately, the path to a truly fulfilling life. We often believe that acquiring power will bring happiness and control. Yet, what if the relentless pursuit of influence, as exemplified by Machiavelli's principles in The Prince, is a path paved with psychological and ethical compromises that ultimately lead to disillusionment? Are we chasing an illusion, a mirage of control that distracts us from a deeper, more meaningful existence? We must confront the uncomfortable possibility that what we think is liberation may be, in reality, a carefully constructed prison designed to keep us eternally striving, yet never truly satisfied. Consider, for example, the modern-day political leader who amasses great power, but lives in constant fear, distrustful of everyone, or the social media influencer, celebrated by millions, who is secretly miserable and disconnected from true intimacy, despite their seemingly boundless influence. The conventional view of Machiavellian power is often presented as a masterclass in strategic manipulation, a relentless pursuit of control by any means necessary. It's a worldview where the ends justify the means, where ruthlessness is a virtue, and where the acquisition of influence is the ultimate goal. However, what if this view is fundamentally flawed? What if the pursuit of power, taken to its Machiavellian extreme, actually leads to a loss of personal agency, freedom, and happiness? The key pattern we will explore is this paradoxical reversal, where striving for external power results in internal disempowerment. We see this pattern throughout history. The CEO who sacrifices their health and personal life to maintain their position, the dictator who becomes a prisoner of their own regime, or the ambitious individual who achieves their goals, only to discover a hollow emptiness at the summit. The consistent theme here is that the very act of grasping for control can lead to the erosion of genuine well-being and inner peace, a critical element that is rarely considered in traditional analyses of power. These examples highlight a profound irony. Those who seek power most aggressively are often the most enslaved by its demands. It's crucial to understand that Machiavelli himself was not necessarily an advocate for the ruthless pursuit of power as an ideal. He was, more accurately, a pragmatic analyst of how power actually operates in the real world, a chronicler of the often uncomfortable truths about human nature and political reality. We must be careful not to confuse observation with endorsement. He wasn't writing a manual on how to be evil, but a detailed report on the methods that are often used, and in his view, even necessary to maintain power. Machiavelli's analysis showed that leaders must often be willing to act immorally, not because they want to, but because the very nature of power demands it. In this view, maintaining control isn't a moral act, but a practical one, requiring choices that are often ethically questionable. He understood that to survive in the cutthroat world of politics, a leader must often set aside their personal morals to do what is necessary in order to survive. But what are the implications of this for those who pursue power? What happens when this mindset, this relentless pragmatism, is applied not just to political strategy, but to one's own life and personal values? What happens when moral compromise becomes a standard practice in the pursuit of influence? This is not simply an intellectual exercise about political theory. It's a fundamental question about how we organize our lives, how we interact with others, and what we ultimately deem as valuable. What if our pursuit of power is actually leading us away from our true potential, trapping us in a never-ending cycle of ambition and dissatisfaction? The implications of this are far-reaching, affecting not only individual lives, but also the very structure of our societies. Look at the world around you, the news headlines, the social media narratives, and the daily interactions, it is clear that the struggle for power is a driving force, shaping everything from political landscapes to personal relationships. What if we've been tricked by the allure of power, believing it to be the key to happiness and fulfillment, when, in reality, it is a path that often leads to isolation, paranoia, and moral compromise? Understanding the true nature of power is essential for not just our collective well-being, but also our individual growth and ability to live an authentic and purposeful life. This video aims to demonstrate that by the end of our discussion, you will never look at power the same way again. The core themes we'll explore are the illusion of power, the psychological burden it entails, the importance of purpose over domination, and ultimately, the corrosive effects of unchecked ambition. To truly grasp these concepts, it's important to understand the historical and political context that shaped Machiavelli's thinking. He lived in a time of constant political upheaval, where rulers were frequently overthrown, and the very concept of stability was in constant flux. The Prince wasn't written in a vacuum. It was a product of a very specific historical context. It's therefore vital to examine Machiavelli's concept of virtue, not merely as skill or ability, but as a willingness to do whatever is necessary, even if it means abandoning conventional morals or ethical principles. This was the essence of his understanding of power, that it requires a leader to be both cunning and ruthless when necessary. Machiavelli believed that a leader must be willing to deceive, betray, or even commit acts of violence to achieve and maintain power. This is a crucial element to understand, because it lays the groundwork for exploring the inherent risks of such a mindset. When you adopt the Machiavellian strategy and make the pursuit of power a singular goal, what are the consequences for your own personal integrity? Are you willing to compromise your values, your happiness, and your peace for the sake of acquiring power? The most important question that we'll be exploring today is not simply about how to gain power, but what happens when one achieves it, and just as importantly, what happens when you pursue it above all else. We will explore not just the external dynamics of power, but more critically, its often destructive impact on the internal landscape of the individual. We will examine how the relentless application of Machiavellian principles can turn inward, leading to a state of paranoia, isolation, and a profound loss of inner peace, demonstrating that the path to external power can often lead to internal ruin. But what if the answer isn't about gaining power, but about resisting its pull? What if the secret to a fulfilling life lies not in striving for external dominance, but in cultivating internal strength and ethical integrity? If power is not the ultimate solution, then what is? What if we've been chasing a phantom while overlooking the true source of fulfillment and well-being? There is a hidden truth about the nature of power, a dark secret, if you will, which we will reveal today, that suggests that the relentless pursuit of influence often leads to a loss of meaning, purpose, and authentic self-expression. We will show how, ultimately, that the relentless pursuit of power can be a self-defeating and isolating trap. We'll also discover that true power comes from an entirely different place, one that does not require us to dominate others, but to master our own inner world. What if there's an alternative path to authentic power, one based on inner strength, integrity, and living a life of meaning and purpose? These questions are not just theoretical, they are personally relevant to each of us, and by the end of this video, we will have explored a path toward a more conscious and fulfilling life. The allure of power often begins with a seductive illusion, a carefully crafted image of success, influence, and control that captivates our desires. But what if this very image is not real, but merely a mirage, designed to keep us chasing after something that is ultimately unattainable? Society, through various mechanisms, from media to education, perpetuates the idea that power is the key to happiness and fulfillment, yet this is a constructed narrative, not an inherent truth. We see this most clearly in our contemporary social media landscape, where individuals meticulously curate their online personas, projecting images of luxury, achievement, and effortless success. Social media influencers, for instance, often present a carefully constructed reality, showcasing exotic vacations, designer wardrobes, and adoring fans. This performance creates an almost irresistible desire in their audience to seek the same external markers of status, believing that these symbols are the true indicators of a fulfilled life. This curated illusion, however, often masks an underlying reality of intense anxiety, insecurity, and a deep-seated need for constant validation. The perfectly posed pictures and carefully crafted captions do not reveal the internal struggles, the stress of maintaining this charade, or the constant fear of losing their perceived influence. This pursuit of online fame and influence, often driven by a longing for power and recognition, can paradoxically lead to a loss of genuine personal freedom and autonomy. The desire for online approval creates a dependence on external validation, where self-worth is tied to the number of likes, followers, and positive comments. The very act of curating an online persona can become a prison, trapping individuals in a cycle of performing for an audience, often at the expense of their own authentic self-expression. Consider the story of a popular social media personality who, behind the glamorous facade, struggled with crippling anxiety and a profound sense of isolation. This individual had amassed millions of followers and seemingly endless opportunities, yet they felt increasingly disconnected from their own genuine desires and passions. Their identity had become so intertwined with their online persona that they no longer knew who they were outside of the performance, exemplifying the paradoxical reversal where the pursuit of online power led to a loss of personal authenticity and inner peace. This demonstrates that the desire for power, particularly when tied to external validation, often stems from underlying insecurities, a need to be seen and accepted by others. The constant craving for recognition and approval is often an indication of internal weakness rather than strength, and it creates a cycle of dependence that can be profoundly damaging. Now, let us shift our focus to the political landscape and examine the work of Niccolo Machiavelli, a figure whose name has become synonymous with the ruthless pursuit of power. Machiavelli is not an advocate for power as a moral good, but rather as a cold, dispassionate analyst of its mechanisms and realities. His work, particularly The Prince, is not a guide to ethical living, but an instruction manual on political pragmatism. He sought to understand how power is acquired, maintained, and lost, and his analysis reveals the uncomfortable truth about the nature of political survival. Machiavelli's insights, though often unsettling, offer a lens through which to examine the dynamics of power without the veil of moral idealism. He argued that leaders, to be effective, must be willing to use deception, manipulation, and even violence, not because they are evil, but because the nature of human beings, in his view, is inherently selfish and prone to treachery. Machiavelli believed that to survive in the complex, often dangerous world of politics, leaders must often set aside their personal morals and ethical considerations in order to achieve their political goals. "It is much safer to be feared than loved," he famously wrote, illustrating the cold, pragmatic approach that he believed was necessary for effective leadership. For Machiavelli, political effectiveness trumped moral righteousness, an approach that continues to influence political discourse. The core principle of Machiavellian leadership often requires a willingness to sacrifice one's moral compass for the sake of power, demanding difficult, even morally questionable decisions in the service of maintaining authority. This raises the fundamental question: what are the ethical costs of pursuing power through such ruthless means? In the constant pursuit of strategic advantage, a leader may need to betray the trust of their supporters, manipulate public opinion, or engage in other acts that would be deemed morally reprehensible in any other context. For instance, a political leader might promise one thing to their constituents to gain their vote, only to betray those promises once in power, all in the name of political expediency. This demonstrates the constant tension between ethical principles and the pragmatic demands of political power. While these Machiavellian tactics might be effective in acquiring and maintaining power, they come at a cost to the individual's character and integrity. The constant state of deception and manipulation creates a fundamental split within the self, where a person becomes increasingly detached from their true values and moral compass. It's a paradoxical situation where the pursuit of power ultimately undermines the very qualities that make one human, that is, honesty, empathy, and integrity. Consider the businessman who achieves great wealth through ruthless tactics, betraying his friends and loved ones, his character completely eroded in his pursuit of success, highlighting the loss of self that occurs through constant deception. The relentless pursuit and maintenance of power exacts an immense psychological toll on those who wield it. The weight of authority creates constant pressure, leading to paranoia and isolation, which in turn feed a cycle of anxiety. Those who hold great power often live in a state of perpetual fear of losing it, becoming increasingly distrustful of everyone around them. The paranoia creates a self-imposed prison, where they are surrounded by advisors and supporters who may be secretly plotting their downfall. This constant vigilance can lead to a profoundly isolated existence, where genuine human connection becomes impossible. This is further compounded by the sacrifices and moral compromises that must be made to attain and retain power, constantly eroding personal integrity and emotional well-being. The constant need to strategize, control, and manipulate others creates a state of internal dissonance, where the individual becomes increasingly detached from their own values and the values of those they lead. The pressure to maintain an image of strength and infallibility can be particularly damaging, as it forces a leader to suppress their own vulnerabilities and genuine emotions. The fear of losing power becomes a driving force that can lead to even more ruthless and unscrupulous behavior. As individuals cling to their positions, they become increasingly willing to compromise their ethics and betray their own principles in a desperate attempt to maintain control. The constant threat of being overthrown or losing influence creates a cycle of anxiety that can be psychologically devastating. Consider a military leader who is constantly planning for a future coup, even while they are in a position of power, highlighting the constant fear that comes with command. This fear of loss also leads to emotional detachment, as powerful individuals become more inclined to view others as pawns in a game of power, rather than as human beings with their own unique needs, feelings, and desires. Machiavellian leaders often need to separate themselves from their own emotions and the emotions of others to maintain their position. This emotional detachment, while perhaps strategically advantageous, leads to a loss of genuine human connection and creates a deep internal isolation. For example, imagine a surgeon who becomes so detached from their emotions that they lose the ability to empathize with their patients. This highlights the fundamental risk in pursuing power as the sole objective. It can lead to a profound loss of what makes us human. And here, we arrive at the dark secret at the heart of this discussion. The relentless pursuit of power, when not guided by higher values or ethical principles, ultimately corrodes the individual. It strips away authenticity, leads to a loss of inner peace, and creates a hollow sense of emptiness. This process of corrosion begins with the constant need to manipulate and control others, and it continues as a person detaches from their own values and moral compass. This constant tension between external ambition and internal integrity erodes the sense of self, creating a state of profound psychological distress. Individuals caught in this trap often find themselves acting in ways that contradict their deepest beliefs, leading to feelings of guilt, shame, and ultimately, a profound sense of meaninglessness. It's important to recognize that this dark secret is not merely an abstract concept. It's a tangible reality for countless individuals who have pursued power without a guiding sense of purpose. This corrosion of the self manifests in an endless cycle of striving and dissatisfaction. The more power one accumulates, the more one desires, leading to a perpetual state of restless ambition. The pursuit of power becomes an addiction, with each victory offering only a temporary sense of satisfaction before the need for more power, more influence, and more control reasserts itself. Like a hamster on a wheel, the individual perpetually chases a phantom, never finding genuine fulfillment. Consider a wealthy businessman, for example, who, despite having amassed a fortune, cannot find happiness or contentment. This constant striving for more is an internal manifestation of the deep-seated unease that develops when one is disconnected from their values and pursuing power for its own sake. From a depth psychological perspective, this highlights a profound truth. When one is not guided by a deeper purpose, one is prone to experience deep-seated psychological problems and dissatisfaction. Carl Jung described the importance of integrating the shadow self, the darker aspects of the personality, to find wholeness. He observed that when individuals fail to integrate these aspects, they often fall prey to destructive patterns of behavior that lead to personal suffering and societal harm. A leader who abuses power is an example of someone who fails to integrate the shadow self, and the suffering that comes with that is inevitable. But what if, instead of pursuing external dominance, we shifted our focus to cultivate internal and authentic power? What if true power came not from controlling others, but from aligning with our own core values and a clear sense of purpose? This is the fundamental shift required to transcend the corrosive influence of Machiavellian ambition. Authentic power is rooted in internal strength, resilience, and integrity, rather than in external influence or control. It's the power that comes from living in accordance with one's deeply held beliefs, regardless of the external circumstances. The concept of personal power requires a completely different approach to leadership, where the aim is not to dominate others, but to serve a higher purpose. Consider an individual who lives according to their values, who acts with integrity and kindness, and who earns the respect and admiration of those around them for these qualities, rather than through domination. This is a model of authentic personal power, one that is rooted in ethics and a deep sense of purpose. This transition from a mindset of domination to one of service and integrity is a process of profound personal transformation. It requires a conscious effort to reevaluate our motivations, to release the need for external validation, and to embrace a more purpose-driven approach to life. Instead of focusing on what we can gain from others, we should ask what we can contribute to the world. Instead of seeking to dominate, we should look to serve. True fulfillment comes not from controlling others, but from making a positive and meaningful contribution to the lives of others. Imagine a humanitarian who dedicates their life to helping those in need, not for personal gain or recognition, but from a genuine desire to serve a greater good. This is a model of purpose-driven action, where the focus is on making a difference in the world, rather than accumulating power for its own sake. We should be encouraged to reflect on our own lives and the values that guide our actions. What motivates you? Is it a genuine desire to contribute something meaningful to the world, or is it a pursuit of external recognition and control? The answer to that question may determine the quality of our life, whether we will find true inner peace or remain forever on the treadmill of insatiable ambition. The journey we have undertaken has revealed a profound truth about the nature of power, a truth that is not merely an abstract intellectual concept, but a fundamental insight into the human condition. The traditional notion of power, with its focus on external dominance and control, is not a path to fulfillment, but a trap that leads to self-corruption and a loss of authenticity. The dark secret we have uncovered is that the relentless striving for external influence, when detached from higher values or ethical principles, corrodes the individual from within, leaving behind a hollow shell of what they once were. This is a critical understanding, not just for comprehending Machiavelli's cynical view of politics, but for understanding the very nature of our desires and motivations. Consider, for example, the constant striving of a business executive who sacrifices all for financial gain, only to find themselves emotionally bankrupt and disconnected from what is truly meaningful. This highlights the central message of our analysis, that external gain without internal grounding leads to ruin. We have seen how the illusion of power, perpetuated by social constructs, seduces us into chasing shadows, and how Machiavelli's amoral pragmatism reveals the dark side of leadership. We have also observed the psychological burden carried by those who pursue power at any cost, the internal battles fought in the face of paranoia and isolation. All of these examples reveal the consistent pattern of paradoxical reversals where those seeking external power end up losing their inner freedom. This pattern of paradoxical reversals, where the pursuit of dominance leads to a loss of personal agency, is not an anomaly, but rather a consistent and universal truth. Those who seek to control others ultimately find themselves controlled by their own insatiable ambitions. The more they accumulate, the more they crave, becoming trapped in a relentless cycle of striving and dissatisfaction. This echoes the classic stories of tragic heroes in literature and mythology, who, despite their immense power and influence, often meet with tragic ends because of their moral compromises. The political leader who betrays the trust of their followers for political gain, only to end up being ousted by their own machinations, is another prime example. The influencer who curates their online persona to the detriment of their own well-being is another, highlighting the self-destructive path created by pursuing external success. Each of these illustrates the inherent flaw in the pursuit of external validation. The more you chase it, the more it eludes you, leaving you feeling hollow and unfulfilled. The tension between the allure of dominance and its destructive consequences can only be resolved by shifting our focus from the external to the internal, and it is here where we find the key to a more authentic and purposeful existence. True power does not lie in controlling others, but in aligning our lives with our core values and a deep sense of purpose. This is not just a philosophical concept, but a practical path to genuine fulfillment and sustainable achievement. The video has sought to transform your perspective, to shift your focus from an obsessive desire for worldly influence to an appreciation for the importance of internal strength, integrity, and personal values. The need for constant validation from the outside world is often a sign of a deeper internal deficiency, a feeling of not being good enough, or a lack of self-worth, which leads people to chase the illusion of status and wealth to feel some sense of value. We have seen that those who seek power to compensate for an internal lack of self-esteem become trapped in a self-destructive cycle, reinforcing their negative feelings and preventing authentic development. This is a critical insight. Are you chasing after external power to make up for an internal feeling of inadequacy? This shift from external approval to internal self-worth is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a crucial step towards a more meaningful life. This is an awakening, a recognition that your value does not come from what you achieve in the world, but from who you are and what values guide your actions. This reframing requires a deep reevaluation of the very foundation of our values and the choices we make to support them. It is an acknowledgement that personal integrity is the ultimate source of true power. This understanding transcends mere strategy and becomes a personal declaration of independence. The uncritical pursuit of dominance has far-reaching implications that extend beyond the individual, shaping our societies, our institutions, and even our collective human experience. Our political systems, economic structures, and cultural norms are often reflections of these deeply ingrained motivations. The desire for control has been the driving force behind wars, oppression, and exploitation throughout history. The relentless pursuit of wealth and status has led to the degradation of our environment and the exploitation of the most vulnerable among us. To understand these larger issues, we must first understand the root of the problem, the individual's longing for authority over others. The pattern of paradoxical reversals that we have seen in individual lives also manifests at a societal level, where nations that seek global dominance often find themselves embroiled in conflicts and ultimately diminished by their own ambitions. This is because the longing for authority is ultimately destructive. It creates not only individual suffering, but also widespread global issues. This is a key insight, that the patterns we witness in the pursuit of worldly influence are not isolated events, but reflections of a deeper collective consciousness that needs to be challenged and transformed if we are to create a world founded on principles of justice and fairness. The implications are clear. Living a life guided by a clear purpose, ethical principles, and genuine values is not just a morally superior choice, but also a more personally fulfilling and sustainable one. This approach to living with integrity is also the most sustainable path, creating a ripple effect of positive change in the world around you. By focusing on internal development and aligning your actions with your values, you not only improve your own life, but also contribute to the creation of a more compassionate and equitable society. This is because actions that are guided by integrity are more likely to foster trust and collaboration, which are essential for a flourishing community. Choosing to live by values instead of external validation is a choice that benefits not only you, but the world around you. It is an active process of challenging destructive systems by choosing a better way to live. You must be aware that the most profound form of power lies not in dominating others, but in mastering oneself. And this requires a commitment to continuous growth, to self-reflection, and to aligning one's behavior with one's most deeply held beliefs. By mastering yourself, you will be less likely to be controlled by external circumstances. This journey is not a destination, but an ongoing path of self-discovery and personal evolution. It's a shift from the outward pursuit of fleeting status to the inward journey toward true wholeness, recognizing that the true meaning of power is not domination, but self-mastery. The threads we have followed throughout this exploration, from the alluring mirage of worldly recognition to Machiavelli's analysis of political power, the psychological burden it carries, the dark secret it hides, and ultimately to the promise of a purpose-driven life, all weave together into a singular and cohesive understanding. The pursuit of external dominance is ultimately self-defeating, leading to personal corruption and a loss of inner freedom. It is an endless cycle that leaves us feeling empty, but by aligning with our deeply held values, we can transcend this destructive cycle and discover a more authentic and fulfilling existence. We have seen that this is not just an idealistic theory, but a pragmatic approach supported by the lived experiences of those who have chosen to pursue a higher purpose rather than worldly influence. There are many examples in history of individuals who, despite having immense power, chose to act with integrity, to serve others, and to make a positive impact on the world, exemplifying that such a path is indeed attainable. From humanitarians to spiritual leaders, there are many examples of those who have shown that true power lies in purpose and not domination, and these examples must be highlighted and celebrated. The initial questions we posed at the beginning of this video have now been answered. Power, as it is usually defined and understood, is not the answer to human happiness, purpose, or fulfillment. The true answer is that genuine power is something completely different. It is a commitment to living a life of integrity, to aligning your actions with your values, and to serving a purpose that is greater than yourself. This is the key to genuine fulfillment, a life of deep satisfaction and real meaning, one that has inner strength at its foundation. The tensions that we have built throughout this video are now released, transitioning from a critical analysis of the perils of seeking influence to a positive affirmation of the benefits of living according to values. We must now move beyond our analysis and seek to transform this understanding into active change by choosing a better way to live and make an impact. True power is not a status to be achieved, but a choice to live a life guided by purpose. The cycle of pursuing power has now been fully analyzed and revealed, and you are now at a choice point. How do we build a society that values purpose and integrity over the pursuit of dominance? This is the new question we must now consider, and it opens up a whole new territory for exploration. We have shown the individual importance of choosing a life aligned with values, but the deeper implications of these principles extend far beyond personal transformation, influencing our political systems, economic structures, and social norms. This is just the beginning of a longer discussion about the power of values and ethics in the world. We must also address the practical steps that we can take to create positive change in our own lives and in our communities. By promoting these ideas, and by challenging systems that perpetuate the pursuit of influence above all else, we can work towards a more ethical world. The ideas we have presented here are not an endpoint, but rather the beginning of an ongoing journey of self-discovery and collective transformation. We hope that you have gained new insights into the nature of power, and that you will leave a comment sharing your own thoughts, experiences, and reflections on the concepts we have discussed. This conversation must not be passive, but an active engagement with the ideas we have presented. This is a topic that deserves further exploration, and in future videos, we will delve into the specific practices for developing internal strength and examine the lives of individuals who have exemplified these principles. This video is just one part of an ongoing exploration, and we invite you to join us on this journey as we continue to ask challenging questions and seek a more authentic and purposeful way to live. We must remember that a meaningful life is not a destination to be achieved, but a path to be walked with intention and courage.